Hello from Dublin Airport Terminal 2 at the very start of the Riverdance Revisited series. I'm former Riverdance singer Patrick Hughes and this is Planet Patrick. I'm Patrick Hughes and this is Planet Patrick. Good morning. I haven't seen you in a while. It's around 7:45 AM on Saturday the 15th of January and I'm getting ready to head to the airport. Today it's Dublin to Heathrow and my destination is Hammersmith. Why Hammersmith, you say? This series is all about Riverdance Revisited. I joined Riverdance in November of 1997 to take part as a singer and onstage drummer in a new company of Riverdance called the Lagan Company. This is the poster that I got whenever I left, and everybody wrote their loving messages to me. Mostly. That's why we can't zoom in on it, I'm afraid. I spent a little more than 2 years in the company, and in this series I'm going to retrace my footsteps from the first 6 months, starting in Hammersmith where we first came together as the Riverdance singers and of course the dancers as well, and we headed out from there at the beginning of 1998 on our tour of Canada and the United States. I hope you can stay with me for this upcoming series of Riverdance Revisited here on Planet Patrick. We're starting with a coach to the airport. So this is Newry bus station. I'm going to pick up a coach here that goes directly to Dublin Airport. Looks like I've got 25 minutes to kill. I have a memory of being in this car park when I was 12 years old. I'd been part of a thing called Project Children, which brought young Catholics and Protestants from Northern Ireland to the United States for a period of 6 weeks, and we were all housed, I suppose, with families over there and then brought together for different events, that kind of thing. So I went away in that summer, I think that's June or July 1986, to a family in Springfield, Pennsylvania, the Snyder family. And after 6 weeks, the bus came back from, I'm guessing, Belfast Airport and brought us here to this, what was then a car park, to drop us off. And I came back with an entirely American accent. I'm sure my parents were thinking, what have we done in letting him go to America? Today's journey retraces the start of my Riverdance experience. We travelled to the Hammersmith Apollo Theatre in London in November 1997. Another company of Riverdance, the Liffey Company, was in the midst of a long-term residency at the Hammersmith Apollo, and so we were able to train alongside people who were actively taking part in a live show. A few weeks later, the Lagan Company would spread its wings and head to Vancouver in Canada. Speaking of spreading wings, today's journey takes me with Aer Lingus on board EI-164, which I'm expecting to be an Airbus A320 from here in Dublin to London Heathrow. Okay, let's get this party started. Going up. Today there was no fast track available, but there wasn't a big queue at security. I guess I thought it would be busier on a Saturday morning. The great thing about travelling with only hand luggage is that you're never tempted to buy anything from the lovely treats and gorgeousness that there is in duty free. All of those aftershaves will have to do without me. I'm heading now for the Aer Lingus lounge here at Terminal 2. If you want to see what that's like, check that out on my A321 Neo flight to Toronto. I'll put a link up here in the right hand corner for you to be able to see that. If you're wondering where Squeaky Betty is, who was my previous bag, she's currently taking respite back in Newry. Instead we've got Tommy the Toomey. If you've been here for a while and enjoying some of my aviation videos and other travel vlogs, you may be wondering, is this series entirely about Riverdance? Well, the tour schedule of the show is providing me with an itinerary, a great way to plan exciting new flight routes, road trips, and shenanigans with friends, old and new. However, this series is not all about looking back and nostalgia. There'll be my usual flight and trip reports, including my first long-haul economy flight, sad face, with WestJet, and a fun trip on board a Beechcraft 1900D with Pacific Coastal Airways from Campbell River to Vancouver South. There may even be a train journey to report, plus lots of stops in fun Canadian and American cities. That's quite enough lounging, now to head to the gate. Looks like my flight's already boarding. Woohoo!
Bye-bye, Ireland.
It was a relatively pain-free trip on the A320 with Aer Lingus. One thing I did notice for fellow AV geeks is that, particularly those who like to film like me, is that they now make an announcement saying that any photographs or film that you take should be of yourself and for your own use. In other words, don't film any staff and passengers. Generally, I try to avoid that anyway, so that's not a huge issue for me. But interesting that they've made a thing out of it now. Next stop is to go and get a PCR test for my upcoming flight to Canada, but I have to transfer over to Terminal 3 for that, I think. It's a bit of a walk to Terminal 3, but it's good to get your steps in. Okay, PCR test done by somebody not entirely wearing her own mask, but let's hope for the best. Next up, Hammersmith. I picked a bad day, the underground is closed. After an hour and a half on this rail replacement bus, I'm in Hammersmith. Hello from under this car bridge. This is the Hammersmith Apollo, now known as the Eventum Apollo. As you can see, Ramesh Ranganathan, the fabulous comic, is having a show here at the moment. I came here in November 1997 to start my training to become a singer in Riverdance the show. Myself and Lorraine Cotter, one of the other singers, stayed in Hayes in Middlesex, and we had no idea quite how far away we were. This is the first place that we met the other singers, and lots of the actual dancers probably knew each other from competition. Apart from Lorraine, I didn't know anybody at all. We were here for the foundation of a new company of Riverdance called the Lagan Company. It wasn't long before the singers got to know the dancers and the fantastic band and the crew and the Spanish dancer, hi Rosa, and also the Russian dancers. And soon friendships and relationships were springing up all over the place. Those of us who were in the show knew a lot about each other's private lives, sometimes too much. And in the main, as you know, here on Planet Patrick, I think that people's private lives should remain private unless they give permission for something to be said. The internet and things like Facebook and Instagram weren't around whenever we started in the show, and probably just as well. So lots of secrets, indiscretions and tomfoolery went on, and none of it I'm going to report on here. I think that all of those indiscretions should remain exactly where they are in the past. I'm hoping to enjoy lots of new tomfoolery with consent here on Planet Patrick over the coming weeks and as part of this Riverdance Revisited series. The first few times that I walked from the tube station, which is just over there, to the front of the theatre, my heart was in my mouth. Just at the idea that I was going to be in this show. One of the guys here needed a couple of days off and asked me to step in, and this was more or less as my training was complete. I was absolutely terrified. But But once I set foot on this legendary stage, my life changed forever. I was lucky enough to perform here in late December 1997 when my mother and sister travelled with my uncle from his parish in East London, where he was a priest, to see me in the show. My mother and uncle have since passed away, but I feel something of their love and encouragement as I set out on this new journey. I had hoped to go backstage, but of course in the 24 years since I was last here, there are now gates which are keeping everybody super safe. It was this part of the theatre that we knew best because that's where we went in and out every day. I'm sure that you might remember Sarah Clancy from my other videos, and Sarah said to me, "You must remember the backstage bar." I don't. As far as I remember, I never went there. One of the things that will happen on this tour is that I'll go back to places or remember things that other people don't, and they'll be shouting at the TV screen saying, "Don't you remember that fantastic restaurant that we all went to in Vancouver?" And I won't, because I didn't. We all had experiences together, usually opening nights, and then experiences which were very different. But that's okay, that's part of the story. I've been back only once before, and that was to see Kate Bush when she did that seminal set of concerts here a few years ago. I came with my friend James, who flew all the way from LA. It was so important. How strange it was to be back in the audience rather than on the stage. I might not have gone to the backstage bar, but I did go to this bar, which was known back then as Finnegan's Wake and is now called the Duke of Cornwall. Sadly, it's no longer the site of the delicious egg and chips on which we used to feast after rehearsals with a freshly drawn pint. I think this is really where we got to know everybody, when they were at play rather than necessarily at work. In one way it feels like no time at all has passed, and in the same breath it's been more than 24 years. That's it for this opening episode of the Riverdance Revisited series here on Planet Patrick. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Planet Patrick. If you haven't already, you can subscribe or indeed join Planet Patrick on YouTube. You can join my other fantastic Patreons who keep me on the road. And if you like live stories, then you can follow me on Instagram, where I document each travel day as it happens. In the next episode, join me in Gatwick, where I'll be taking my very first economy trip with WestJet. So looking forward to that narrow seat. Until then, take care. Bye bye. I'm Patrick Hughes, and this is Planet Patrick.